Konnichiwa, everyone. The Chaos Master is back at it again with another fanfiction reading. I am so sorry for the delays in my uploads. Uh, Work has been brutal past few months. Not to mention this heat is a killer. Hope you're all staying cool and whatnot. Anyways, as you can see by the title and the thumbnail, we got yet another story to read. What if Deku played hero and villain, part 1? Or, as the fanfiction is called, Playing Both Sides, by DVD 181. Now, some of you might be wondering why ain't I continuing Kubikiribocho? Well, thing is, while I was recording when I last recorded, I learned that someone else has been doing this fanfiction, and I guess I kind of lost motivation after that. If you guys want me to keep doing that story, let me know down in the comments. And yes, this is My Hero Academia. I know, I'm surprised myself. I didn't think I'd get into this series, into this fandom at all, but calling me surprised. Anyways, I read this like a few months ago, and I freaking loved it. Alright. Well, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe to my channel so you never miss a video. And please, if you have any recommendations of any stories you want me to read, put them down below in the comment section. And if you want me to continue Demon of the Hidden Leaf, please let me know. But in the meantime, let's take a trip down an alternate universe to find out what would happen if Deku rose to the top of both heroes and villains. Let us begin. Playing Both Sides by DVD 181. Izuku Midoriya always wanted to be a hero, but his life changed the day his father came home on the edge of death. Now, his lifelong dream has been altered, to rise to the top of both heroics and villainy, for the sakes of those who also fell beneath the cracks in society. After all, if he played both sides, he'll always come out on top. Right? Chapter 1. The Day Fate Stood Still. Tenko Shimura had always wanted to visit UA High. Earlier in his life, it was because of a strong desire to be a hero alongside his elder sister, Hana. Despite the small issue of his quirklessness, he admired their faculty, and their record for producing amazing heroes like All Might. He never thought he'd go, yet now that childhood dream had finally been realized. Greetings, you annoyingly heroic children, the white-haired young man said in a raspy tone, increasing the volume on his microphone as a camera drone circled him. My name is Decay, Field Commander of the League of Villains. On behalf of Prometheus, our Grand Commander, I'd like to welcome you all today to today's guest lecture. As UA's Hero Class 1A bunched up behind their homeroom teacher, Eraserhead no less, one of the few heroes Tenko genuinely admired, the villain leader's gaze zoomed in on one student in particular, whose face bore a look of surprise and fear, but whose eyes exalted confidence and a hint of glee. Game on, little brother. Or perhaps I should address you as Boss. All it takes is one small deviation to change fate. The right person being in the wrong place at the right time can truly make all the difference in the world and change the course of history once and for all. Perhaps in one world, Izuku Midoriya's story would see him grow up quirkless and fatherless, eventually to inherit the power of One for All, take All Might's mantle as the symbol of peace, and end the generations-long battle of the brothers in a climactic fight against Toriyama Shigaraki, the new symbol of fear. This is not that story. But, just like in that original timeline, our tale begins with a simple spot of bad news. I'm sorry, kid, but it's probably not gonna happen. You're quirkless, the bald doctor said, swiveling around in his wheelchair to face his patient. Huh? The green-haired child managed in shock while his mother's eyes narrowed with a quiet fury at the doctor's dismissive diagnosis. The man tapped a few commands on the tablet, and a nearby screen displayed X-ray images of a human foot. Listen, young man. Most people who have quirks have developed pinky toes without a joint as a sort of transitional streamlining of human biology as our species evolved. As you could see, the typical human now, a quirked individual, roughly 80% of the population does not have that toe bone, while your foot does. This test is about 96.23% accurate in determining whether or not you'll develop a quirk. And what about the other 3.77%? Inko demanded, a hint of irritation in her voice from the man's callousness. We can do a blood test if you're truly in denial, but it is unlikely to change the outcome significantly. Best you could hope for is something minor and or invisible, responded the doctor. Before the increasingly irate green-haired mama bear could voice more of her irritation towards the man, her son pulled on her shirt sleeve. Izuku? She asked as he looked up at her. I don't want to be here anymore. Let's go home, the toddler said in a strained voice. Inko acquiesced to her son's request, picking him up off the chair and turning to leave. Wait, you forgot to schedule your next appointment, the bald doctor began, only to be cut off by a furious glare from his patient's mother. Given your careless behavior and crushing my son's dreams, I will be seeking out a different pediatric doctor, Ingo said in a tone of mock sweetness. Thank you for nothing, Dr. Tsubasa. As the door swung shut behind the green-haired woman, the man inside turned to his desktop monitor setup and began typing furiously. Lord is going to have my head for this unless I could produce some good results on a high-end project, muttered Dr. Kyodai Garaki, or as he was known in at Musutafu District Hospital, Kensei Tsubasa. Later that evening, Inko Midoriya pushed open the door to her husband's study. Hisashi Midoriya, love of her life that he was out on a business trip at the moment, and so her son was using the guest account on the computer again, probably to watch the same video of All Might's debut that he has added hundreds of views to on his own. As she did, the young Izuku turned around, the voice of All Might continuing to blare a reassuring message from the computer speakers. They felt more hollow than reassuring to Inko at that moment. Tears filled the boy's eyes as he pointed at the screen, asking his mother the fateful question that he wanted an answer to so badly. Can I be a hero? A hero just like him? At that moment, Inko was overcome with a wave of sorrow, rushing over and embracing her unfortunate son. I'm sorry, she sobbed, holding Izuku in her arms. If only I could be better. If only I could say yes. I truly wish you could live this dream. While his sorrowful mother embraced him, Izuku's stare became less teary and more dead. It's true. Not all men are created equal. This world isn't fair. At that moment, something began to slowly bend inside him. His innocence, maybe a sense of morality. Whatever it was, the young brunette had one thing. Whatever it was, the young brunette had one thing he was sure of after this day. I don't like it. Little did anyone know what the implications of that change in his mentality would be. A day later, at preschool, the green-haired boy was confronted during recess by some acquaintances of his, much to his chagrin. So, Deku, your birthday was yesterday. What's your quirk? Demanded Katsuki Bakugo, the red-eyed blonde son of Inko's best friend, Mitsuki. His quirk, Explosion, allowed him to sweat nitroglycerin from his palms and detonate it at will. Given this quirk's strength, he had become even more brash, cocky, and arrogant over the past several months than he was before. Is it telekinesis like your mom? Or fire breath like your dad? Asked Hiroki Tsubasa, grandson of the bald doctor that had diagnosed Izuku's condition. His quirk, Red Wings, was a very visible pterodactyl wing mutation that allowed him to fly just above the ground. He could probably fly higher if it wasn't for his love of very unhealthy snack foods affecting his physique. Maybe it's a combination of both, and he could be a firebender, proposed Soshiro Yubiri, who actually had no special connection to Midoriya whatsoever and was just there. He was born with a transformative quirk called Long Fingers, which currently let him stretch them up to 50 centimeters in length. I actually don't have one, Midoriya admitted, which instantly silenced all three other children. After a few moments, Bakugo spoke up again. You what? You heard me, Kachan. Sabasa's grandpa said I have the extra toe joint, and I probably won't get one. The brunette continued, not noticing the hostile silence from the other three toddlers. That's not But that's not the end of the world. I could still... A small explosion cut him off. You could still do what, huh? You're quirkless, which means my nickname for you was You're quirkless, which means my nickname for you really was accurate. You are useless. Bakugo berated him. Kachan, that's mean. Midoriya retorted, but the other three only laughed. Ew, quirkless. I wonder if that's contagious, Tsubasa said in disgust. I'll have to ask Grandpa, but I'm sure he'll agree with me. Hey, I wonder, does being quirkless mean that quirks don't work on him either? One in the be aloud. Maybe we should test that. I don't like where this is going, Midoriya thought as the other three children turned to him, malicious grins on their face. One fairly brutal beatdown later, as he lay on the playground while covered in bruises and small burns, Izuku Midoriya had only one thought as he stared at the sky. Kids are cruel. But maybe so is this world. The years drug on after that, and so did the life for young Izuku Midoriya. Preschool became primary school, and new classmates met new people for Bakugo and company to turn against him for his quirklessness. As time flew by and the young boy became more aware of the world around him, more observant of his peers, and developed his personal code of ethics, he also became more and more jaded towards society. Why is it that I became a communal punching bag for a biological reality that I had no control over? He wondered, laying face down in the dirt after being beaten up by Bakugo and his lackeys for protecting one of his classmates for them. The boy in question wasn't even thankful to him afterwards. doing little more than nudge him with his foot to make sure he wasn't dead before running off. Why is it that the teachers actively cheer on discriminatory behavior and outright bullying when it's done by the kids with heroic quirks, but shut down any attempt to fight back by those of us with weak, villainous, or no quirks? The dark thoughts in the back of Midoriya's mind continued to fester and grow as he watched a girl with a heteromorphic spider quirk get mercilessly beat by one with X-ray vision, before he got to take the heat off of her by being the quirkless wonder again. I hate this concept of rising stars, and the idea that they need to be protected from any sort of consequences. What's wrong with society that we let the so-called heroes get away with literal murder if they claim they felt threatened, or were busy fighting a villain and caused collateral damage? He wondered, watching the sand hero Snatch get a not guilty verdict for suffocating several people to death with his sand while defeating the cannibalistic villain Moonfish. Snatch was lauded for his heroism in doing so by a press release from the Hero Public Safety Commission's head office in Paragon Plaza, something that disgusted the child even more. And can anyone even do anything about it? Little did he know that his life was about to be forever changed when he woke up on his 8th birthday. With all things being relative, Midoriya thought he had a pretty good day. He woke up early with enough time for a pretty good breakfast, was well rested and didn't get caught in any incidents on his way to school. He successfully outran Bakugo and his lackeys and met a very friendly cat while hiding in a tree near the back corner of his elementary school's campus. A cat that was very appreciative when he offered it some shrimp from the bento his mother had made him. Then he managed to escape being made a fool of by the history teacher before escaping Bakugo again and having enough time to catch a skirmish between local Musutafu hero Death Arms and a small group of bandits. Now, having finished his birthday dinner, Inko Midoriya's legendary katsudon, and his dessert, green tea mochi, yum! The boy was sitting in the living room while his mother finished washing the last of their dishes. Hero Analysis for the Future number 6 was in his hands as he pulled up the nightly news, hoping to catch some hero fights to analyze. He was particularly hoping to see a broadcast about someone with a really fascinating unique quirk, like 13 or the newly debuted Skycrawler. As he finally found a channel displaying a hero fight, some villain with a short-range teleportation quirk against Endeavor, yak! He noticed something drip onto his notebook. A droplet of sort of black fluid. Wondering if there was a leak in their apartment, something to let his dad know about as soon as he called from California to wish Izuku a happy birthday. He looked upwards, and immediately gasped in surprise. A small orb of viscous black liquid was forming in midair in the middle of their living room, and rapidly expanding in size and turbulence. "Mom, you should probably come see this," he said, raising his voice in alarm. "One moment, Izuku, honey," Inko called back, drying the last dishes. She entered the room just in time to notice the enormous orb of what looked like very thick ink directly in front of her son. Right before it exploded, covering much of the room in a liquid that smelt like burnt rubber while revealing a figure inside it. The man in the orb was tall, probably just over 2 full meters in height, impeccably dressed in a formal black business suit with a white undershirt and no necktie. What was the most concerning, aside from the fact that he had just walked into the Midoriya family's living room, was the fact that the upper half of his face was one giant open wound. The man had no nose, eyes, forehead, or hair, just a wound dripping blood all over Inko's carpet. Before the woman could act in violent self-defense and rip the heart out of his chest, he spoke in an all too familiar voice. "Izuku? Inko?" The green-haired woman almost felt her own heart stop as she realized this was none other than her own husband, Hisashi Midoriya. "Dad?" What happened to you? Izuku shouted in shock. Can't lie my way out, the man chuckled bitterly. All might try to lobotomize me with his fist. What do you mean, All Might tried to lobotomize me with his fist? Inko demanded. Hisashi's injuries had by that point caught up with him enough to force him to drop to his knees. Contact when stable, he gasped out before looking towards where he last heard his son. Happy birthday, Izuku. Love you. Then the man was engulfed in black fluid again, disappearing as quickly as he'd arrived. Izuku dropped his notebook on the floor in stunned surprise, while his mother did the only sensible thing that can be done when your husband warps into your living room, says that he picked a fight with All Might and lost, then leaves. She fainted. 3 weeks later. So, tell me the truth, Hisashi, if that even is your name, Inko said in a mildly irate tone as she sat down in the chair by her husband's bedside. The man had an ungodly number of life support devices plugged into his arms. Head and throat, all of them beeping, buzzing, or dripping away. Who are you really? Hisashi sighed as best he could. I knew I'd have to explain this to you one day. I just didn't think it would be so soon, he said. I did not lie about my name. It really is and always has been Hisashi Shigaraki. I was never really fond of that surname, though, which is why I took your name when we married. As you probably figured out, I'm not a salaryman accountant working overseas for the Silverstein Bags hedge fund in San Francisco. I am, put it simply, a businessman, he said, when Inko leveled a glare at him that he could practically feel. Even if he couldn't see it, he withered slightly. Fine, I'm a villain. Technically, the villain. As Inko gasped slightly before fixing her face with a look of determination. Define the villain. Sorry. Hisashi bit his lips slightly, one of the few facial features he had left, before continuing. Have you ever heard of a bedtime story about a boogeyman who could take your quirk? Inko nodded numbly. I have. But even if he was real and not just a story to scare naughty children, wouldn't he be long dead by now? A moment later, she connected the dots. You, the boogeyman. I'm married to him, aren't I? Hisashi nodded as best he could. Correct. I am just over 130 years old thanks to an immortality quirk that I gathered from an associate of mine when I was on 40. I am, or I guess I was, ruler of Japan's underworld, with a trans-Pacific criminal empire that had tendrils in Hong Kong, Korea, Australia, Indonesia, Chile, Mexico, and the western United States. And All Might? What did you do to provoke him? Ingo pressed. It's personal for him. I can't fully go into details, but about 40 years ago, I killed his mentor, Isashi said. He's been after me with what I can't describe as anything other than a murder boner since then. And this fight saw him nearly get his wish. Does he know you survived? The green-haired woman asked. I don't think so. He doesn't know that I had enough regeneration quirks to keep myself alive, even after a hit like that. And while I was retreating, I used a body double quirk and caused a massive explosion to fake my own death. The ancient supervillain elaborated. Now I just have to cover my tracks for good. Sitting up in bed, the eyeless man looked as best he could at his wife. I'm stable for now. Once able to move and operate again, I'll begin dismantling several of my largest criminal operations. I have enough wealth squirreled away for us to live off centuries if necessary, and could probably build an unassailable fortress for us to hide in if the world figures out who I am, he said, being cut off by his wife. Hisashi! After a few moments of silence, the man sighed. Are you mad at me? Inko cleared her throat. I'm going to be perfectly honest, Hisashi. I am furious with you right now. Uh-oh, thought All for One, the Dark Emperor, scourge of the Pacific, man of 1,000 quirks, grand regent to several built-in villain groups started or co-opted by his subordinates. If you weren't tied to this life support system, I would have you sleeping on the couch for the next 10 years, Ingo continued, seemingly unaware of her husband's internal terror. But with that being said, I'm not entirely surprised. What? Hisashi wondered aloud. His shock genuine this time, perhaps even more so than when All Might charged. Perhaps even more so than when All Might charged him with his innards dangling out of the hole in his stomach. Look, Inko began, looking her husband right where his eyes used to be before they were surgically removed via fist. I knew the moment I met you in that konbini that you were lying about something. Well, maybe not lying so much as telling half-truths. If I hadn't been okay with that anyway, I wouldn't have agreed to a date to you. I wouldn't have married you. I wouldn't have had a son with you. I wouldn't have cried on the phone with you over Ezekiel's diagnosis. And most of all, I wouldn't have fallen in love with you. As the mostly faceless villain gaped in shock over his wife's passionate monologue, the woman continued on anyway, a fierce look burning in her eyes. So if you think I'm leaving you, that I want a divorce, that I never want to see you again, you're dead wrong. Bending down till her face was just inches from his. Till death do us part, right? Inko Midoriya walked out of the underground hospital ward her husband was being kept in. Making her way over to the side office, she left her son with one of his analysis notebooks and a live feed of several different hero fights. As she entered the office, Izuku turned to her, having just finished a new entry in the on the Edgelord hero, Odd Eye. Is Daddy going to be okay? All right? He asked. Inko smiled softly. It's going to be a very long time before he's healthy again, but he'll be all right, she said, taking a business card Hisashi had given her moments before out of her pockets. Oboro's Back Alley Tavern, she wondered, flipping the card over. On the back was a number and a short note. Call this number and ask for Kurogiri. He knows the full story. Pulling her phone out, Inko dialed the number and waited for it to ring through. How do I do Kurogiri's voice? Oroboro. No. Oroboro's Back Alley Tavern. This is Oroboro. How can I help you? Asked a baritone voice on the other end of the phone. Hello. My name is Inko Midoriya. I'm looking for Kurogiri. The woman said in a hint of uncertainty in her voice. One moment, please, the voice said, before a sound like pressurized air being released was heard over the phone. That would be me. Am I to presume that my lord has explained the situation to you fully? This time the voice had come back slightly deeper and more distorted, almost as if it were echoing through a fog bank. That's right, Inko replied, still curious about the change in his voice. I will be with you in just one moment, came the response. The phone then hung up, and before Inko could say anything, a cloud of dark purplish mist coalesced in front of her and her son. Two yellow eyes appeared in the mist, which then took on a vaguely humanoid form. I am Kurogiri. Please step through this portal, and do not be alarmed. The elder Midoriya gulped slightly as a hole in reality opened, revealing a dimly lit bar on the other side. In one corner, a preteen with light blue hair played video games, mumbling to himself in irritation. Taking her son's hand in her own, Inko stepped forward towards an uncertain future. As soon as they had both passed through the gate, the dark mist collapsed in upon itself, leaving no trace that they had even stood in the dimly lit underworld hospital. Okay then. Let's see, that was the end of chapter 1, and we are only at half an hour in. Let's see. Let's see, there are a total of 15 chapters currently, with this story being updated as late as March 1st. It is July 11th. It's been about 2 months since it was last updated. Alright, here's what's gonna happen. I'm going to record 3 chapters of this story at a time, and have them uploaded one day at a time. So by the time this week is over, I should be able to have it. I should be able to read it in a total of 5 days. So by, say, Saturday, I should be okay. I should have this entire story read. Alright. Recorder notes, I guess. I enjoyed the story. I mean, I find it freaking hilarious. Ugh. I mean, come on. I mean, come on. We have a story where it's dad for one. I mean, between this and, like, all dad might stories that are freaking hilarious as well. I have another story I'm probably going to read in, like, at one point or another in the near future. Another freaking yes, another My Hero Academia fic known as Endgame by Monsieur Atta. It is freaking hilarious. It's a crack fic taken seriously, so that should tell you everything you need to know. Anyway, let's get on to Chapter 2 before I talk my head off any further. Chapter 2. Call me Prometheus. Oboro's Back Alley Tavern, 5:35 p.m. Stepping through the portal, Inko and Izuku entered a dimly lit but clean tavern. In one corner of the room, a couple of rough-looking thugs sat in a booth, drinking and laughing. Another corner had a small couch where a blue-haired preteen growled indignantly while playing an archaic beat-em-up video game. 2 other thugs stood on either side of the couch, drunkenly cheering the kid on as his character executed a brutal piledriver move on a similar-looking thug on the screen. Lady Midoriya, young lord, spoke the voice Inko had heard on the phone a minute or 2 earlier. Turning to look behind them, the mother-son duo was met with the sight of a well-maintained oak bar with several cabinets of quality liquor behind it. Standing behind the bar was a man seemingly made from the same dark purple mist as the portal they had arrived through. wearing a fancy suit and waistcoat. "Are you Katagiri, sir?" Izuku asked. The mist man nodded as the black fog slowly receded from around him, revealing a youthful-looking man with several nasty scars on his head and neck. "When on duty for All for One, that is my code name. However, when in public or working behind the bar, you may call me Oboro Shirakumo. It was my name before my accident," he responded. "Can I get you anything to drink?" "Two waters, please," Inko said, gesturing to the preteen gaming in the corner with two drunks cheering him on. Her face took on a concerned expression. "Is it really alright for someone his age to be here without supervision?" "I see," Shirakumo, or was it Kodagiri, responded. "Lord All for One must not have told you about young Tomura, then, and I think I understand why." Gesturing at the boy, the mist man elaborated. "Tomura Shigaraki's real name is Tenko Shimura." Inko gasped. "Shimura? Did something happen to my brother?" she asked, thinking of her younger twin brother and the cold attitude he adopted towards their mother after she placed him in foster care. Something she did due to the threat posed by the very same man who was her husband now, ironically. Oboro nodded. "Her brother became abusive towards his children over any mention of heroics in his household. Tenko was presumed quirkless, but after one particularly bad day, his quirk manifested in a destructive and fatal manner." As he spoke, the preteen's game character was killed in a boss fight, while the two men drunkenly laughed. Tomura screamed in inarticulate rage and grabbed his controller tightly in one hand. The plastic device quickly crumbled into dust and spilling all over the floor. The Mistman loudly sighed and opened a warp gate, producing a new controller while another warp gate vacuumed away the ashes from the floor. "Tomura Shigaraki, please remember Sensei's instructions and wear your gloves when playing your video games," he reprimanded his ward. "It's their fault. I want to destroy them," began the brunette preteen as he gestured at the two drunk thugs, before being interrupted by a green-haired motormouth. "Wow, is that your quirk? Looks like a 5-point contact." Hold on. "Wow, is that your quirk? Looks like a 5-point contact-based disintegration quirk that has so many potential applications. You could use it in a private sector to clear construction debris and build pathways through terrains, or effectively dispose of hazardous waste if Japanese quirk regulations were more lenient." Izuku began to ramble as his pencil flashed across the paper of his notebook. "But the potential as a rescue hero is amazing. He could be just like 13. And him! No. And him! Tomura shouted. "Who is this brat, anyway? Another stupid hero worshipper? A symptom of everything wrong with this society? Why, I ought to—" he ranted, starting to reach towards the brunette with all 5 fingers. "Tomura Shigaraki! This child is Sensei's biological son, and this woman is his wife," Kodagiri elaborated, gesturing at Inko. "She is also your biological father's sister, and thus your aunt." The blue-haired preteen stopped reaching forward immediately, frozen stiff. "My father's—" he asked slowly, his hands reaching to scratch at his neck. No, that can't be. He never said anything." His hands were stopped by 2 others. "My brother hated our mother for putting her career before her family," Inko said, slowly lowering the boy's hands down to his sides. "In a way, I understand him. But he went too far, and I can't forgive him for what he did to you, now or ever." Ruffling her nephew's hair, the brunette woman elaborated. "It sounds like what you did was a pure accident, Tenko. You are no monster. But your father was." Looking up at the ceiling, Inko glared. Wherever he is now, wherever he is, I hope he never knows peace for what he did. The brunette's breathing steadied, opting not to dwell on his aunt for too long. Tomura turned his attention to his cousin and adopted brother. "This is Sensei's son?" he asked in a disappointed voice. "He's so small and weak, obsessed with heroes. How did Sensei even let that happen?" Izuku stopped writing and looked at his cousin's eye, and looked his cousin in the eye. It's not our fault. It's not our grandmother's fault as a hero that my uncle treated you the way he did. And it's not my dad's fault either as a villain, he said. It's only Uncle Kotaro's fault that he was a bad dad to you. I hope my dad has been better. Tomura made a strangled sound of rage, or maybe just sheer existential frustration. God damn, that was a hard word to pronounce for some reason. And sat down on the couch, returning to his pre-court video game. Izuku stared at him pensively, lost in thought. He's not wrong, though. Society really is a mess. Dad being a villain was part of it. But I think our grandma might have somehow pressured to give up my mom and uncle to continue her career as a hero. The brunette thought, flipping to another page and noting these thoughts down. Maybe being a hero isn't the perfect pedestal I thought it was. 2 years later. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't be doing just so funny just doing that.
FX is Justified Thing Primeval premieres July 18th on FX.
God damn it. Sorry about that. Izuku Midoriya, age 10. Tinko Shimura, age 14. Izuku Midoriya's day could definitely have been going better. The green-haired child slid down a railing, banked hard right around the corner, and scrambled up a fire escape to the rooftop of a flower shop. His green head of hair helping him blend in with the planter boxes around the edges of the roof. A few seconds later, the splashing sounds of footsteps in the rain echoed down the street as Bakugo, Yubiri, and a couple of other bullies whose names he didn't know dashed into view. "Where the hell did he go?" Yubiri shouted, looking left and right. "Hell if I know, Knuckle. Hell if I know, Chuckle Nuts. Keep looking," ordered Bakugo as they continued looking down the street. Midoriya stayed undercover for another minute, despite the rainy weather and gray skies, before shimmering down a drain pipe and escaping into a back alley. Stupid Kachan. No, Bakugo. He doesn't deserve that nickname anymore. How is it my fault that I'm his favorite target just because of something I can't control? As he walked past the side alley, the sound of heavy breathing and sniffling caught his attention. Curious, the boy turned to his right to see the source of the noise, only for his eyes to widen in shock. A blonde-haired girl, not much older than himself, covered in grime and streaks of blood, sat in the alleyway in a gap behind a dumpster, attempting to use a piece of cardboard from the waste bin to keep the rain off of her. Before he knew it, his feet were already moving. A blonde-haired girl not much older than herself, covered in grime and streaks of blood, sat in the alleyway in a gap behind the dumpster, attempting to use a piece of cardboard from the waste bin to keep the rain off of her. Before he knew it, his feet were already moving. And if I already read that, I'm sorry. I just had to look up how to, I just had to go to YouTube real quick to see exactly how Himiko sounds. You know, what you gonna do. Hey, are you alright? Hey! Hey! No, come on. How do you do with Zuko's voice? Hey, are you alright? He asked softly, kneeling down next to her. The girl recoiled in shock, attempting to curl further into the cardboard-covered hole behind the dumpster. Easy, easy. I promise I won't hurt you. I'm not worried about you hurting me, the girl murmured. I'm worried that I'll hurt you. What? Why? Midoriya asked, extending his right hand towards her in what was supposed to be a common gesture. This is the wrong thing to do, as the girl violently recoiled in the hole behind the waste bin, dropping the piece of cardboard as a shield between them. Because I'm a monster! A freak! I hurt people! She shouted, breaking down in tears. I could hurt you! Why are you being so nice to me? Isn't saving someone who needs to be saved what heroes do? Do I need more of a reason than that? The greenhead asked. Silence greeted him, moving aside the cardboard. He found the girl staring at him with teary eyes, sparkling with a glimmer of hope, maybe? Before he had much time to dwell on that thought, however, he heard angry shouting that was all too familiar further down the alley. God damn it, Bakugo! Midoriya thought to himself, looking around the alley, spotting a stack of intact cardboard boxes. Thinking quickly, the greenette grabbed 3 empty ones, placing one over the blonde girl, and then snacking the other 2 over the top of them. Shooting a text with a location off the Kirigiri, Midoriya calmed his breath and watched Bakugo and his cronies ran past the alleyway, still looking for him. Damn Deku! I'll give him the beating of a lifetime when I find him! The explosive blonde shouted. Deciding he burned that bridge on Monday when they returned to school, the boy waited until the angry voices had retreated far into the distance, before standing up and removing the boxes. Behind him, the familiar barometric change from Kirigiri's quirk swelled into existence, and he almost felt himself sagging in relief. Lifting the last box up, he found that the blonde girl had passed out at some point in the past few minutes, possibly for being emotionally overwhelmed by someone asking her if she was alright. Kirigiri, we need to get this girl out of the rain and get me out of here before Bakugo comes back, Midoriya elaborated. The mist man nodded, gently picking up the girl and carrying her through his portal. A small card fell out of her dirty school uniform as he did, and a curious greenette picked it up to read it. Himiko Toga, huh? I get the feeling your story isn't going to be any happier than Tenko's. 1 year later. Izuku Midoriya, age 11. Tenko Shimura, age 15. Himiko Toga, age 12. The girl that Midoriya had found in that alleyway, Himiko Toga, turned out indeed to have a tragic backstory involving abusive parents. In her case, because of her blood-based transformation quirk and her dietary needs for blood. Whatever quack counselor the Togas had used clearly did not understand the ramifications of suppressing her quirk and her dietary requirements for nearly a decade. And Midoriya himself was amazed she had survived so long without consuming blood, given her body's need for the substance. This was quickly remedied when she unofficially and probably illegally took up residence in an upstairs room of Ouroboros' back alley tavern. Inko had wanted to take the girl in as a proper family member and adopt her. However, the discovery that Himiko's biological parents had paid off the school district to erase all footage of the incident that made her a criminal on her first day of middle school, her urge to consume blood had reawakened from seeing one of her classmates bloody after a fight. She stabbed him and drank his blood with a straw while he was unconscious. And Inko's time commitments as a de facto single parent and a full-time doctor made it unfeasible. Himiko had quickly proven that she fit in well with both Tenko, who was slowly becoming less unstable and more well-adjusted teenager, and Izuku, and was academically at the same level as the former due to his need to catch up from his period of childhood instability. To Tenko's dismay and Izuku's amusement, she also proved to be very good at fighting games, causing the DK user to rage quit several times while playing against her. She also seemed more naturally inclined towards villainy than Izuku, putting her in close alignment with Tenko. As a prospective villain group, the trio, plus Kodogiri by default, decided to call themselves the League of Villains, and ultimately decided they need to start recruiting members. This leads us to the present day, where the three of them are now conducting their first interview with a potential member, forwarded their direction by the info broker slash sleazy bastard otaku, Girin Kaguro. Girin initially tried to charge the three teens and preteens a high price for his services, but curiously backed off the second that Izuku mentioned that he didn't like this deal and was going to call his mother. Odd. So, you're Twice, right? Himiko asked the man sitting across the booth from him. That's my name, don't wear it out! The masked man replied cheerfully before his voice took on a completely different. Who the hell is Twice? You're the one of the wrong guy. Whatever you say, Mr. Twice. Thank you. Watch your tone, you little bastard. Once again, the man's personality swung like a pendulum in a matter of moments. The three interviewers, dressed in dark suits and ties, looked at one another quizzically. Luckily, they already researched the man in front of them, so Izuku knew how to approach the situation. Twice. Quirk double. Allows you to duplicate yourself or others, provided that you have the basic dimensional measurements on hand for them. Wanted for 24 cases of armed robbery, destruction of public property, and disturbing the peace. Real name, and forgive me if I fucking butchered this name. Jinbu Jin Buba Gaiwara. The green net smirked as the masked man suddenly shot to his feet in alarm, gripping his head with both hands. I'm not Jin! Jin tried to kill us! The man ranted in an agitated voice, his voice swinging back and forth as his personalities met in agreement on something. Where is he? We'll kill him before he can kill us. Why would Jin kill you? Himiko asked the man, leaving through some of the papers on the table. Jin created us, but we tried to kill Jin. We know we failed because if Jin died, so would we, Twice said in the odd fusion voice. Jin would want revenge on us for being just a clone. Mr. Twice, how much damage can one of your doubles take before dissolving back into mud? The brunette queried, passing a note to Tenko. The brunette teen read the note, making eye contact with the other, and nodded quickly as he got up from the table. About as much damage as a broken bone, more than that causes us to disintegrate, came the masked man's response, still caught in his mental breakdown. Izuku smiled warmly and nodded. Good to know. Denko, if you would. Twice didn't have enough time to react, for he found his right hand in the firm grip of Tenko Shimura. Prying up the hand's middle finger, the brunette nodded before suddenly pulling it backwards with a loud snap. The masked man screamed in pain, shock, and horror. It hurts! It hurts so damn much! He shouted before the situation caught up with him. It hurts! But I'm not dissolving. Jin began to laugh. It really was true. I'm really the real me. Tears streamed down from his eyes, but the expression on his face was anything but sad. So how does it feel, Jin Booba Gaiwara, to know you're really you? To know that you're really you. That you're not a clone or an imposter or a double, but the real deal down to the core, Izuku asked. The Green Knight was surprised when he found himself suddenly embraced from across the table by the other man, who removed his mask to reveal an average-looking blond male in his early 30s with a large scar bisecting his forehead vertically. Knowing I'm really me feels so good! Jin shouted, his voice is slowly losing the unnerving two-tone harmony it has previously and becoming more of a normal. I'm in your debt for life, boss! With that, the man went back to sniffling and crying joyfully on the preteen's shoulder. Ezekiel turned as best he could to his partners in an eventual crime and shrugged. Our annual recruitment drive is a success, I guess, he said hesitantly. Tenko laughed. Given that she's treating you like the second coming of Amaterasu right now, I guess is an understatement, the brunette said. Himiko rolled her eyes and kicked him in the shin over that comment, but it was more of a good-natured love tap than anything malicious. Would you like us to find a healer to fix your finger? No, hold on. Would you like us to find a healer to get your finger fixed? The blonde goat asked. I'm pretty sure Hisashi-san is probably capable of healing that up with no scarring. Jin Booba Gaiwara, the newest member of the League of Villains, straightened up and bowed as he held his damaged right hand up. No need! I just need it splintered and iced and I'll be fine in 2 weeks. I want to keep this scar on my head as a symbol of my loyalty, he said, looking at the swollen and crooked purple appendage with an expression of nigh reverence. Izuku side-eyed Tenko and Himiko, shrugged in confusion and turned back to his new recruit. Welcome to the League of Villains, then, Jin Booba Gaiwara. And again, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name to high hell. We could provide you with food, housing, a day job here at the bar to cover up involvement in any illegal activities, and most of all, a purpose. A purpose? Their blonde man asked curiously. A purpose? Forgive me for trying to voice act these guys. I want to add a little bit of personality to these guys. A purpose? The older blonde man asked curiously. The brunette nodded, a determined expression stealing on his face. To reform society by any means necessary, whatever the cost, and no matter how much blood we must spill. Are you up to the task? He asked. Jin nodded vigorously. I would be honored to join you, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku laughed. Please, Mr. Midoriya is my father. Call me Izuku when we're not on duty. As for when we're on duty, you may address me as Prometheus. Alright, and that is chapter 2 of Playing Both Sides. Honestly, I freaking love this story. It is amazing. I always find villain Deku stories to be more interesting than hero Deku stories. In this story, we get the best of both worlds: a hero and a villain Deku. It's kind of amazing. Alright, quick question. How many people have actually read this story? Truth be told, this isn't even my second time reading. This is like the fourth time I read this story. I don't really usually reread fanfictions. I mean, the only other time I've reread a story a second time in like the same year is The Naruto Phantom Menace party story. Yeah, Naruto basically gets a harem of kitsune ladies with very big assets. Yeah, let's leave it at that. Anyway, moving on. Honestly, I haven't really watched much of My Hero Academia, which I know is a stand for someone who's like reading these fan fictions. But then again, most of the stories that I read, I barely know anything about. In fact, I know more about freaking Naruto via playing the Ultimate Ninja Storm collections than I do from the series. Hell, I haven't even watched all of Dragon Ball, which is hilarious because I'm probably going to do that during the weekends. I mean, finally, Dragon Ball Z Kai's on Hulu, so maybe I could do that during the weekend. Start watching the Dragon Ball series from beginning to end. Watch all of GT before I start watching Super. Oh, great. Am I rambling? I don't mean to do that. I guess I'm more like Midori than I realize. Anyway, let's do Chapter 3. Pain in Her Eyes. A few months after Twice's recruitment into the League, there may have been once a time when Eri was happy. The small child isn't certain of this assertion, but she has to imagine that her life is better before her quirk curse killed her father and made that woman abandon her to Overhaul. A few days ago, Rappa had snuck her into the upper courtyard of the manor. He was always the nicest of Shisaki's men, and let her see the sky, the sun, and the life outside the underground. Looking at how the birds and butterflies soared, uncaring through the air, it made the child's heart stir with an intense desire to finally be free. A thought she did not let go, even as Shisaki drained her veins dry and reassembled her later that day. Ooh, I already hate Overhaul. One thing I don't like is the abuse of children. Have I ever mentioned that before? I don't think I have. But that's just like my one true trigger. Seeing children being abused, it makes me wanna break something. Or someone. Hmm. Yeah. So now she ran. Eri ran, knowing that if the caretaker she had given the slip managed to catch her again, there was likely no escape from the compound ever again. Down the alleyway, past the garbage cans, around a stray cat, and towards a nice-looking lady and her son on the street. Oof! Izuku groaned as the white-haired child with one horn impacted his leg, knocking him to the ground. Oh dear, are you alright? Inko asked, crouching down next to her son and the small child who had run into him. That goes for you too, young lady. The green woman's eyes narrowed as she noticed the bandages on her child's arms and legs, and the dirt on her dress. This reeks of abuse in so many ways. Izuku, meanwhile, studied the child in front of him. Like his mother, he noticed the dirty clothes and the bandages on her arms, but he had an extra depth of perception that his mother did not. Maybe it was the fact that he was actually touching the girl, or maybe it was just his natural analytical talents, but the 14-year-old had also noticed her thin, frail physique. She's malnourished and shows signs of neglect, if not outright abuse. Then the girl looked up at him, and Izuku simply froze. Her two eyes, red like bloodied rubies, boiled with pain. This child, the teen thought. She's definitely suffered at least as much as Himiko, possibly as much as Tenko has. She can't be older than 4. What kind of monster could inflict this much pain on a child so young, seen in her eyes? Eri. The small child froze in sheer terror at the deep, commanding, baritone voice that spoke her name. Turning around slowly, Eri's worst fears were realized as she saw a golden-eyed man standing at the other end of the alley, a plague mask on his face and white gloves on his hands. This was Kai Shisaki, a young master of the Shihasakai, and source of her pain, the man known as Overhaul. Please do excuse my daughter. She has an awful tendency of running away, the man said, holding his hands up in a placated gesture. Shisaki kept his bloodlust well contained, but what little leaked up was enough to make the hair on both Midoriya's necks stand on end. This guy's bad news, Izuku thought while Inko's palms glowed slightly as she established telekinetic grips on several objects in the alley. Do you have any idea why that might be? The teenager challenged the man against his better judgment, keeping one hand on the child's shoulder to try to reassure her. He'd better be ready to run at a moment's notice. Overhaul sighed. It's a funny and kind of sad story, really, but also an embarrassing one. I'd rather not tell it in public view. Would you mind coming back here so let me tell you without fear of eavesdropping? While saying this, the man took a step forward and began to slide off one glove. Before he could make another move, or the Midoriyas could attempt to fight back or escape, Eri let go of Izuku and ran back to Overhaul's side. I'm sorry, father, she said, attempting to calm the man slightly and divert his anger away from the mother-son pair at the mouth of the alleyway. Shisaki inhaled deeply, his fury visible from the clenching of his fists and stiffening of his body. But after a few moments, he relaxed slightly. Very well, Eri. We are leaving, he said while turning to walk away. While doing so, he briefly looked back at Inko and Izuku. And thank you for helping me find her. I'm very appreciative. Later, while strapped to the chair in Overhaul's laboratory, feeling the life drain out of her as he extracted all of her blood yet again, the white-haired unicorn child wondered if she would ever see the two people who had been so nice to her and tried to protect her from Overhaul again. A plague doctor mask? All for One asked, sitting on his throne while hooked up to his life support equipment. Those are a hallmark of the Hasakai, a Yakuza family based in the western Tokyo metro. I do remember seeing their boss, Kosuke Murasaki, shortly before my fight with All Might. At the time, his second-in-command was a young man with golden eyes named Kai Shisaki. It sounds like he may have been the man you encountered. Kai Shisaki, Izuku muttered. A printer in the corner of the room came to life as Hisashi activated a technopathic quirk, using it to print all the information he had on the man and his organization. The first page that printed depicted the same golden-eyed man that Inko and Izuku had encountered earlier that day. That's him. Everything about him and that girl screamed bad news. A child? Fascinating, Hisashi said. I remember during my last meeting with Murasaki that he mentioned his daughter and son-in-law were expecting soon. I wonder if that girl was the same child they were expecting at that time. However, too much is amiss to suggest that Shisaki is the girl's actual father, which suggests that both Murasaki and his daughter's family may not be in the picture anymore. There was so much pain in her eyes. Whatever's going on with her, I could tell that she's got at least as tragic a backstory as Himiko, if not Tenko, the teenager replied, leafing through Shisaki's file. I'm pretty sure this man is abusing her somehow. And what are you gonna do about it? Huh? Izuku asked, turning to the blind men in the back room. You heard me. I know you desire to become a hero, despite me being literally the greatest villain in Japanese history. This seems like a good trial run of Mori Grey heroism, dipping slightly into villainy, Isashi responded. You're so much like your uncle that it's terrifying. But you've got much more common sense and think more critically than he did. Setting down the papers, Izuku straightened up and turned to his father. You've talked about my long-dead uncle more than a few times, and I've mentioned something called One for All in the past. I'm tired, Dad. I want the truth out of you. And when I say the truth, I mean the whole truth, the teen said, determination shining in his eyes. Isashi grimaced slightly and was silent for a few moments before sighing deeply. Fine, but you want to pull up a chair for this one, because it's not a short or a fun story at all. And so, the great demon lord All for One began to tell his story. I was born in the year 2001 here in Shizuoka Prefecture. My parents were Hirona Suzumebashi, heiress to a noble estate in Hokkaido, and Tamura Shigaraki, heir to one of the few zaibatsus of its size to have survived the 1990s economic recession. It was an arranged marriage by their parents, and not one that either of them agreed with. That's never a good start to a story. No, no, it was not. Anyway, I was born with white hair and red eyes, same as I had until that blonde gibbon surgically removed them with his fist. Ugh. I was assumed to be an albino and was looked at oddly. But nobody really suspected anything was genetically amiss until my brother, Yoichi, was born 3 years later with white hair and green eyes, a combination unheard of at the time. Oh, there were signs that you would both go on to develop quirks in the future. That's correct. But at the time, God damn my stuttering, muttering mess! That's correct. But at the time, nobody knew what a quirk even was, because they'd never been seen before. In order to not be perceived as freaks, Yoichi was forced to have his hair dyed, and both of us were pretty much isolated within our mother's large estate. Homeschooled out of the public eye in order to keep from dying of boredom. Homeschooled out of the public eye. In order to keep from dying of boredom, we turned to superhero comics we secretly ordered online and hid it from our parents. Our favorite was Captain Hero, but while he liked the main character for his sense of justice and self-sacrifice, I preferred the main villain for his gritty realism and willingness to get his hands dirty to achieve his goals. That sounds awfully familiar. I may have gone too far in emulating the Demon King and achieving my goals. Right as All Might was shearing my face off, I came to the all-too-late conclusion that I was just sending Chewy Beale would taken that shtick too far. Awkward but correct. Because of our parents' hatred for each other, we became their proxies in their little war against each other. Yoichi was my mother's favorite child, so she locked him in the house and kept him from developing normally. This decision affected his physical development and eventually led to him developing a chronic autoimmune disease. I was my father's proxy, so he pushed me to excel until I broke, and then made me keep going. Pretty much the only semblance of normalcy your uncle and I had was sneaking into each other's living quarters to read comics. I don't like where this story is going. It gets far worse than the abuse of parents. Around 2020, the glowing baby was born in China, and society went topsy-turvy. It was thought that a global pandemic at the time was forcibly evolving the children of its survivors to develop quirks. But Dr. Garaki, whose real name is actually Kyuichi Shigaraki, and is my cousin on my father's side, thinks they were about to develop naturally anyway, as nobody in our family had the virus but my cousin. Your uncle and I all developed quirks anyway. Garaki is your cousin? Hard to believe, I know. He couldn't handle more than a single copy of his own immortality quirk, while I have 3 preventing me from aging as badly as he did. I had just finished college and was trying to get your uncle out of that household when society came unglued and the Sino-American War started flying over our heads. With the quirks being made an unexpected addition that made a pear-shaped situation go completely plum-shaped, in the chaos, Japanese society started to crumble, and so I started amassing influence as a self-defense measure. Unfortunately, I larped a little too convincingly as a demon king, and your uncle started rebelling against me in order to keep the old government afloat. Which eventually went down in flames anyway when the People's Republic of China nuked their national diet. Wait, was all a big misunderstanding? It was at first. However, after my brother died and passed on the transferable quirk I didn't know he had, taking a stockpile quirk I'd given him with, I kinda went mad. Even after the world stopped being at war with itself and Japanese society stabilized, I continued to grow my criminal empire while hunting down and murdering all of my brother's successors in pursuit of his quirk. Since it was the only memento I had of him, this lasted until All Might became the first hero or villain to nearly kill me in my 130 years of living. And now here I am, stuck to this chair. You're telling me that the most modern hero society in Japan and You're telling me that most of the modern day hero society in Japan and the modern villain scene all exist because my grandparents were terrible at parenting at the most inopportune time in human history? Correct. Izuku blinked a few times. That's pretty bad. Now what? Hisashi sighed. While All Might demolished and imprisoned a lot of my lieutenants in Tartarus, my abrupt disappearance and presumed death had caused a power vacuum that has been filled by my remaining lieutenants and allies and some new faces. Additionally, the heroic Public Safety Commission's current administration appears to be trying to slowly transform Japanese society into a totalitarian quirkist dictatorship over the next few generations. I feel this is my mess I have to clean up, but there is little I can do from this chair. Son, do you think you could forego heroics in favor of becoming the demon king the underworld needs to bring back stability? Izuku shook his head. I'm sorry, Dad, but I can't give up on my dream, even with no quirk. But I can also take your goals on as well. If Hisashi still had eyes, he would have opened wide in surprise. Both? He asked. You want to pursue heroics and villainy? The Greenette nodded. It's as you said. The Japanese underworld needs a strong leader to purge the most violent and anarchist influences in it, while hero society needs a symbol of reform to get rid of the corruption in its midst, while thwarting the HPSC's authoritarian tendencies. If I could be both the #1 hero and the #1 villain, I'd be able to make both dreams a reality and bring stability to society while staving off anarchy, stagnation, and tyranny alike. As he took his son's words in, a grin slowly grew on what remained of Hisashi's face. Magnificent, he murmured. It's like you got all my best traits and all my brother's best traits with your mother's common sense and stubbornness. I will support you in all your endeavors in both heroics and villainy, son. Izuku beamed at his father. Thank you. Now, about the Hasakai. The Hasakai, or how you pronounce it. Hisashi nodded. The girl, yes. We'll want to rescue her from that situation immediately. If she's being experimented on like that, she undoubtedly has an interesting quirk as well. Speaking of quirks, are there any in particular from my collection you'd like? Fire breath, air cannon, heavy payload, color change? The greenette shook his head. I want to treat this like a heist and an espionage mission, so having a quirk might color my view of my capabilities as a front-line combatant instead of a mission leader and planner. I do not want a quirk at this time, but I will consider it in the future when I start preparing to go to UA High. Splendid, Hisashi responded. I recommend that you begin preparing for your operation now. I'll have full access to all my archives for you by the end of the day. In the meantime, you should ask your mother to help you find you and your new League of Villains someone to train for combat with. As Kodagiri opened a portal at the far end of the room, the greenette waved goodbye to his father, returning to the bar to begin planning for his future as a villain leader. While he had initially been confused about what his father meant by asking his mother to assist in combat training for the League, Inko was more than amenable towards Izuku's request when he asked her. Now he, Tenko, and Himiko were standing in the dojo that Kodagiri had warped them to. Looking out the window on one side, the greenette could tell the dojo was in a loft overlooking the inside of the old warehouse. I wonder who Auntie was able to set us up with as an instructor, Tenko pondered, playing some mobile game on his phone as he sat on one side of the room. Oh, I know, Himiko said, all hyped up. She probably was able to get in contact with someone really cool in the underground, like the hero killer. Learning from him would be amazing, the blonde teen gushed. I don't know about that one. I think she probably just knows someone really good with martial arts. The green ant responded, completing his latest set of analysis notes on Overhaul's quirk. One way or the other, I hope Jin is having a good time right now. Meanwhile, somewhere in Tokyo, Jin Bubagaiwara wandered down a street in a surgical mask covering his face to help him avoid detection and ensure that he remained mentally stable. While he made significant progress on a psychological level since joining the League, he still wasn't quite back together and wanted to make sure that he didn't have have an episode while carrying out his important task. After all, Prometheus sent him on the streets with the goal of finding the Shai Hisake's headquarters, which is why he had several dozen clones of himself walking, bicycling, or taking taxicabs across the region looking for men in bird masks. It was like a giant manhunt, and boy was it fun! Abandoned warehouse dojo. He's probably fine right now, Himiko said. You also hear footsteps? Sure enough, the sound of footsteps came from a nearby corridor, signaling the arrival of their combat instructor. The three teenagers looked expectantly towards the doorway, only to be caught completely off guard by the new arrival. Standing in the dojo, wearing a slightly loose-fitting green sweatshirt with elbow pads and a ballistic vest over it, a pair of black combat pants, a set of dark combat boots, and a black domino mask, the trio were greeted by the sight of Enko Midoriya? Mom? Izuku exclaimed in surprise, jumping back slightly. Auntie? Tenko yelled, jumping to his feet and fumbling his phone back into his pockets. Inko? Himiko asked. The green-haired woman smiled. Good afternoon, class, she greeted. I'm glad to see you all here right on time. Who's ready to get started on close-quarters combat training? Izuku and Tenko both let their expressions fade from confusion into enthusiasm, while Himiko jumped up and down. We are! Who did you have teaching us? Mr. Compress? The hero killer? Inko laughed. Don't be silly, Himiko. I won't let anyone as pedestrian as them face you, she said. I'll be training you myself. Just like that, the enthusiasm drained from all three teens, replaced by a look of abject confusion. You'll be training us, Mom? Izuku asked in surprise. Are you sure you're up for that? Himiko added. Tenko tapped both of his companions on the shoulder. I don't mean to alarm you guys, but, I think I hear boss music. The blue-haired teen said, a petrified look on his face as he stared at their teacher. Lesson 1 starts now, the green-haired woman said cheerfully, before an intense look appeared on her face. Your goal is to survive the next 5 minutes. Good luck. Meanwhile, in Tokyo. God damn, it's hot! Jin grumbled to himself, an ice pop in his hand. The blond-haired man continued to march down the side streets of the Tokyo metro, combing the city in a grid pattern with his doubles to ensure he didn't miss the Hasakai's hideout. A few young children ran past him on the street, laughing and shouting silly names at each other. The scarred man laughed to himself slightly, then looked up to the sky. I hope those kids are having fun too right now. Meanwhile, at the dojo. At the warehouse dojo. Izuku groaned in pain, lifting himself off the mat slowly in the hopes of avoiding his mother's attention. He staggered to his feet just in time to watch Tenko charge at Inko with all 5 fingers uncovered, extended, only to have her gracefully sidestep the teen's charge, grab him by the shirt and belt, and throw him head over heels across the room into a pile of cardboard boxes. A few moments later, decay spread through the boxes and caused them to crumble, revealing the dazed teen lying half conscious on the floor. Himiko let out a war cry and jumped towards their foe from behind, bringing a knife down over her head in a stabbing attempt. Inko responded by pivoting around, disarming the blonde teen with a graceful kick, and then channeling her quirk in a devastating palm strike that launched the girl back several meters. The green-haired boy shivered as his mother turned to look at him with a look that promised pain. Well then, Izuku, are you going to show what you got? Come to mommy, dear, she said, her palm going slightly. Izuku dashed backwards in an attempt to retreat, only to feel a sudden tug on his t-shirt labeled with the word pants, of course, as Izuku used her quirk to pull his son towards her rapidly. The last thing the teenager could think before his face collided with his mother's fist pretty much summed up the situation. Well, fuck. I'm sorry, that's just freaking hilarious. I can just picture the image of 3 teenagers getting their ass whooped by very chubby woman. It's fucking hilarious. Alright. Well, I think that covers the basis of this of part one of what if Deku played hero in part one. I really hope you guys enjoyed this story. I know I did. And if you want me to continue Kubikiribocho, put it down in the comments below. I might record that tomorrow. But in the meantime, if you guys have any recommendations for stories of My Hero Academia, Naruto, hell, or even some good Dragon Ball Z fanfictions you want me to read in the future, leave them down below. I'll give them a good read. I'll at least read a few chapters of them, give them a few reads, and I might record them in the future. But in the meantime, stay unpredictable, my friends. Bring chaos and anarchy to the world, and I'll see you all next time. Chaos Control!